Hello, I'm Dr. Danita, your host for Baggage Claim, Unpack Your Bags with Dr. Danita. We're back for season 2. It's season 2 already. And you know that I often say that on this carousel of life, picking up baggage is sometimes really unavoidable. But unpacking those bags becomes a choice. So I'm coming on live every single week, and I'm going to offer those educational tips and emotional health tips, but just remember that they are in no way a replacement for professional counseling. If you're finding that those bags that you're carrying are way too heavy for you to carry, definitely reach out for help. You can find me on my Facebook page at Dr. Danita Thompson. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel to catch those replays. All right, so I'm ready to join you live. Remember to hit like and share. You want everyone to know that I'm going on. Like and share, and let's get started. Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining me for another episode. This is episode 7 of Baggage Claim, Unpack Your Bags with Dr. Danita. You know what we do. If you have been watching for any period of time, if you are a fan, go ahead and type in the comments that you're a fan. Go ahead, hit the likes, hit the share, like and share, give me some hearts. And if you are new to Baggage Claim, let us know where you're viewing from. I am excited about tonight's episode. Again, this is episode 7, and so if you didn't catch the first 6 episodes, go ahead and go over to the YouTube channel at Dr. Danita Thompson and subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe and then hit the notification bell so that you can receive all of the episodes going forward. So, tonight is episode 7, and the topic is godparenting. And so we named it godparenting. We've been talking about many different types of relationships and how those relationships get navigated. But when we think about godparenting, it's somewhat like what we would call spiritual parenting. And I've made it clear on the show that this is not necessarily a Christian show, but because I am a Christian, because I'm a pastor, a lot of the topics that we talk about end up sliding into that vein. And so when we talk about spiritual parenting, it's more of a term that you hear, a relationship connection that you hear about people that are in a church setting. And so this is like a mentor-mentee type of relationship, and it can be amazingly fulfilling and a very beautiful asset for the church at large. It's more like a creating of an intergenerational relationship where someone who is a little bit more seasoned may pour into or have a mentor-mentee relationship with someone who is coming along in life, so to speak, wherever they may be in life. And so although these could be very beautiful relationships, they can also be very difficult at times to navigate because you're just trying to learn how to do life together with someone who you didn't necessarily raise, but they're coming into your life as an adult. So tonight, I have a special guest that is joining us tonight, one who I call son, and we're going to invite on Nate White. Welcome, Nate, to Baggage Claim. I'm so glad you joined us tonight.
Thank you for having me. I love the smile. Love the
Thank
smile. You're
you.
looking good.
Thank you. Thank you. Quite debonair yourself.
Thank you. I'm trying.
So we opened up the episode when I gave my commercial. It talks about, unpacking bags. And so we're going to talk a little bit tonight about some baggage that we created along our relationship journey. And we're also going to talk about how we unpacked those bags and got to where we are today. So
Awesome.
I've been quite transparent over these last 6 weeks. Several of the episodes have involved me, and so this one involves me as well. And so I do what I do purposefully. I want people to be able to recognize that people can have difficult relationships or difficult times, I should say, in relationships and still get through them. And so my goal is to help people understand or give people tips in navigating through the difficult times of relationships. So let's just get started, and we usually kind of lay a foundation for how our relationships began. And so, if you don't mind, you can start by kind of talking about how we met and how we established a relationship. I'll jump in as well since we're talking about us.
Awesome. Well, if I'm not mistaken, our relationship started at an Applebee's. We were introduced to each other via Kiera, and Pop Arnell, you, Kiera, and I sat down and we had a conversation. And I think it was the basis of you all trying to get a chance to figure out who I was because I was connected to Kiera. And then at the same time, uh, I think because she had shared so much, I think you wanted to pick my brain too, if I remember. That's how it kind of
Mhm.
started. And so we ate a good meal over at Applebee's, and just had a good conversation. And I think you all were at ease that I wasn't some creep or a weird guy trying to get close to your daughter. And then from there, I think that's what initiated the relationship. And then we started talking, periodically that from there, and met up a few times, and it started to grow. But I think that was the genesis of how we all got together.
Yeah, yeah. I think I can't remember the timing, but you also had visited the church, and
Mhm.
I don't know if it was before then or after then, but I knew that based on the conversations that Kiara was having about you and about your relationship, the mentor-mentee relationship, and after you visited the church, I knew that there was going to be something about us in terms of a relationship or mentor mentee relationship or spiritual um, parenting kind of connection. I don't know that I told you right away, but it's what I do. And so there are certain people that I encounter that I kind of know early on that this is going to be one of those types of relationships. And
Yeah.
so, yes, we started talking and talking about, your ministry and what you were doing with the young adults in the training grounds. I don't know if it was that called that then, but
Mhm.
we talked about you and how you grew up and just getting to know each other,
Right.
and it was very easy conversation. I do know a few times, even though it was easy conversation, there was some hesitancy initially about my role or me saying spiritual mom. I
Yeah.
remember you saying you'd had a couple of experiences that maybe weren't as productive, I should say, as you
Yeah.
may have wanted them to be. And so, yeah, so we talked about ministry, we talked about ministry dreams, and just starting to lay that foundation of developing a relationship, right?
Yeah, I agree. That's a
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
And so, shortly after, I don't think it was that long after, Kiara
Right.
mentioned to me that well, Kiara knows that her parents, the type of parents that we are, and just to give some background to what I'm getting ready to say, um, almost 30 years ago, we had the opportunity to be invited into someone's home so that we could save money for purchasing our first home. And
Right.
when that happened, I was so grateful. I didn't know the person. My pop knew her, but I didn't really know her. But I took the risk, and I figured this is the only way that we're going to be able to save this money. We were paying a lot of rent, and we knew that we had no money above the rent. And so this was an amazing opportunity that people of our color usually don't get. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do this thing. And we had 1 year. And so since then, we have had several people that have lived in our home for similar reasons, to either save their money or preparing for marriage, or starting over for different reasons, but all in line with I need a jump start, or I need another start. And so Kiara, had knowing that, she started saying, it might be a good idea, because Nate and his wife, that would be a great idea for you to bring them in, and help them get that start. And so let's talk about that. When that was proposed to you, what were your thoughts?
So when it was initially proposed to me, I was dead set against it. It made me uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to even a part of what you were saying earlier about the hesitancy about doing relationships, uh, I just I wasn't all the way with it at first. I felt like it was a good thing and it was a great offer, but when she brought it to my attention, I was just like, no, I think I'm all right, And we just met each other too, so it was maybe 3 months in, 2 months in, if you will. So I was kind of like, it's a little quick, at least when it was first brought to my attention. And so I think we kind of sat on it for a little while, maybe a few more months. But one of the things that started to turn for me was that a lot of the contracts that I was getting as a general contractor were in that area. So in Columbus and further south. And I was just like, why are all of these contracts and offers that I'm
Mm.
getting going in that direction? And so Columbus became that, your home and your area became that location that at least cut 45 minutes out of my travel every day.
Yeah.
And um, it just a lot of things started pointing in that direction. And when I had the conversation with my wife, we prayed about it and thought about it. We really felt that the Lord was leading us in that direction, and we were in an agreement together. So it wasn't just a thing like I had the idea; like we both kind of felt all right with that decision, and so we took it. We went with it, and so us coming into the home, like I said, we were kind of back and forth for a little bit, but when we decided that that was going to be it, you opened your doors. Everyone in the family literally opened the doors to us. I think I even remember calling one day because I was in the area doing a job, and I said, "Do you mind if I stop by?" And she was like, "You said, do you mind if, like, do I mind if you come home? Like, what are you saying, Nate?" And I was just like, "Oh, yeah. Can I'm gonna stop by for a moment to do something." And I remember just like that was the beginning of us coming down there. So that was an interesting transition, but it really helped. And I thought after a while we saw the opportunity of us partnering and learning how to
Mm-hmm.
get on our feet. That was something that obviously Danielle and I needed to learn at that time, and it was being introduced to us. So it again, all things started pointing like this makes sense. We're going to get assistance. My contracts are down there. We're going to be around like-minded individuals. This looks like a good opportunity. So yeah, so we went with it.
Yeah, yeah. And so then essentially we became a blended family, right? And
Indeed.
so, right. And so, as we started navigating and kind of doing life together, like, what were your expectations, for coming to live with us, and then also as we continue to develop our relationship, what were some of the expectations?
So the expectations of coming to live with you all, um, for my wife and I, for the family, it was for us to save money and to get on our feet. um, what we were looking to glean from you all was how to do that, how to have a house and how to have structure, and even added to that because myself and Kevin are in similar fields. I saw an opportunity of growing in the trade as well, with Kevin and his company and things of that nature, and I had an opportunity to do that. So we had a lot of opportunities to grow. So I think the expectation really was to learn how to take that next step, how to go into the next space. And then I think the expectations when it came to the fact that we were then also partnering in ministry uh, really was to, uh, if you will, contribute to the next area that mending is heading towards and going to at that time. And so the resources and the information that I had, willingly giving and sharing all of those things. And so my intent and what I saw was we were really going to have like a very heavy mutual exchange of everything, of how we would benefit. We would glean as a family and grow as a family and see the ministry move forward as well. And so, yeah, those are some of the expectations that I had going into transitioning down to the home.
Yeah. So yeah, I would agree. For me, I was looking forward to the mutual pour. I had noticed how, how rooted you were in the ability to teach the word and revelation of scripture, and I knew that I had seasoned wisdom, to be able to impart and to pour into you and Danny. And so I, I I also saw you as, a budding leader in the ministry, and so kind of like just how I would navigate you, or not navigate you, but navigate our relationship to the extent where you would grow, as a leader in the ministry. And so we had some common goals there, and
Mhm.
as we continued, to do life together in the home, with any relationship, we were parents of adult children, and now we had what we considered more adult children because you were the same age as our children, and so
Mhm.
we brought in more adult children, and so we had expectations with our children, we had expectations with you all, and expectations just in relationship in general don't always get met. Some of our expectations were, we felt clear, and others were, I think, not as not communicated, but
Mhm.
expected, and so which is a recipe for a failure quickly. Um,
Yeah.
but let's talk about how the after we were getting along well, and then um, we started hitting what we would call rocky roads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I think just like anyone, the Rocky Roads literally kind of came out of nowhere. I know that during the time of us hitting some of those roads, I think that it not only caught us off guard, it was almost like, wait, how is this even happening? Like I guess we all thought we were looking in the same way, and so um, when those moments started to happen, they started obviously subtly, but when they did, it just seemed like the chasm that was intended to be created of separating us like really started to get big randomly because it was just like, wait, I think I'm speaking, A, B, and C, but then you're possibly hearing one, two, three, and just trying to figure out how we got there. So I think that is what started it. It was just misunderstanding. I think where we thought that um, our contributions were clear, what we knew what we were doing, and then we would see the responses of, okay, maybe that wasn't it, but then we were also confused. I think that it just started to compound more and more over time. um, so I mean, we could talk, I mean, however you want to
Yeah.
lead it, we could talk about something specific, but I think it really just started really out of nowhere, but then started to, I would say, snowball slowly but surely into some things that were just harder to really understand.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you were saying that you thought that you were meeting the expectations. From our perspective, there were expectations that weren't being met, and I govern myself, I believe, with you all the same way that I govern myself with my own kids. So, however I would say it when, if I wasn't pleased with something. However I would say it with my own kids, I felt like I was saying it the same way with
Mm-hmm.
you and,
Right.
with you and Danny. And so then I'm thinking, well, they weren't raised with my kids, and so maybe this isn't as, as effective. But then I'm like, okay, I don't know how I'm supposed to communicate. And then feeling like, I'm in my own home, I want to communicate the way I want to communicate, and we all just really need to, figure this out. And so when you say, okay, we can be specific for a context sake, so that people
Mhm.
understand, because we're talking like, oh, it got really bad, but we people don't know what got bad. And
Right.
so
Right.
and so we started out by saying the main goal was for you to come save money. We had that clear. You were going to come save money
Mhm.
and be able to provide a home, clear up your credit, things like that for your family. And
Mhm.
so you were saying, okay, well, I need you to help. So one of the things that I didn't account for was, I knew how to help, but the season of my life, I started to think back. The season of my life didn't give me the capacity
Mhm.
for meeting with you as much as needed to guide and to navigate and to get you to the point in which you needed to be able
Mhm.
to, navigate those waters of home ownership and all of those things that were going to be, important for you. And so, because
Mhm.
that was a point in my life, where a season where in ministry we had just finished a transition, and we were kind of
Mhm.
making a comeback from that. Um,
Right.
Pop had just retired, and that was a transition in my life. And my business started picking up, and I was working crazy long
It
hours.
did.
And so
Yeah.
I was beginning to realize that I didn't really have the capacity for giving what was needed. And what I was beginning to see was that, for me, my expectations weren't being met. Household expectations, and coming home from long day, and it just wasn't. It didn't look the way that I expected it to look,
Right.
and it just started getting very stressful. The
Mhm.
atmosphere became very stressful. And
Yeah.
so um, then I think, for me, the icing on the cake was when it started not working out for you with your contract.
Mhm.
And I thought that I was giving my, best advice in relationship to what direction you should take with that particular situation. But I don't think you felt that it was going to work for you that way, and
Mhm.
so you had ended up ending a contract. And so in my mind, I'm thinking all of the main reason, for you being in the home was now going to slide down a slippery slope quickly. And so those were the parts that put put me in a position of really trying to process, how do I navigate now.
Yeah. I think so I will say my view on it was you were right. We were in the home doing contracts. Things were flourishing when I first got there. I mean, that year was earmarked as one of the most lucrative years I've ever had in my company. And we've had conversations like, okay, Nate, you're bringing in money. Because I think the issue was never, can I make money? That wasn't the issue. It was how to steward it. But I didn't know that. So I had an influx of money where I'm able to pay three other individuals, and I'm running what is seemingly a rather decent small business. Um, but I just didn't understand how to manage it. So money was coming in, but just as fast as it was coming in, it was leaving. And so I know that we even had a point where we had a system where I was giving you.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the certain amount, but we were developing a savings, trying to have some level of consistency. And for a portion of time, I don't remember how long that is, it was working,
Yeah.
because we established that relationship. You guys got it. I just send it and we'll just figure it out, giving you what we can. And then I remember for me, during the contracts, the thing that I thought that I was doing was defending my business, but I ended up learning that it was me hurting it because I didn't understand the business side of general contracting, and that was they wanted to make price cuts with the contract, and I felt like those price cuts were too steep, and so I'm like, no, I'm going to stand my ground, and ultimately I ended up. I won't say burning a bridge, but they decided to see how, they're a bigger company. I'm a small guy.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can wait this out. And that hurt. But I'm thinking, I'm standing my ground. I offer good quality work. And the proof is in the pudding. I mean, we were doing a lot of
Mhm.
work for this company for a small person team. And so when that shift happened and they started uh, seeing if I could, hold my own, and we going back and forth, it what I never accounted for was the impact that it was going to have on the family. And so I had that tussle on. I know what I'm worth. I'm fighting for that because this is my thought process.
Mhm.
And I was overlooking, not paying attention to the fact that it was impacting the household and then ultimately impacting everything else that we had agreed. And so the advice that you were giving, um, I never thought that it was bad, but in my mind, I was like, there's no way to go back to doing, $12 an hour or $10 an hour and, working multiple hours a week or two or three jobs when this one contract that I have or these opportunities that I have through this vein uh, offer me much more than that. And I think it was, well, I won't say I think, I know that it was pride and where I thought I was trying to, like I said, defend my company and defend my work. I allowed that defense stance to stay too long. And so I think by the time I caught up and realized what was happening, it was being translated to you and others as if that I didn't want to do the other things. Which I mean, that was never my heart because though I don't have an issue working $12 an hour, I just know that I'm worth so much more than that, and that was just a hard pill to swallow, especially because it felt like it was overnight. Like it literally was like, "Hey guys, we're gonna do budget cuts, and so these project numbers are gonna have to get adjusted." And I'm like, there's no way that I'm gonna have to fire my three people who are helping me do the good work that y'all love. Like that doesn't make any sense. Um, but that was something I needed to learn, and it wasn't until I would say maybe 6 months or maybe a year later, with just talking with people in the field, that I learned that the overall company was actually just trying to squeeze out the people that they didn't want to work there. And I was actually a preferred individual, but if I had just waited and kind of took a step back and ate the dirt for a little bit, it would have it would have put me in a better position. But I couldn't see that because of the fact that I'm I'm not gonna lie, I got the hustle mentality. I'm gonna go get it. I'm gonna go make it happen. And if you can't keep up with me, I'm sorry, but that's the only way you're gonna get me. But I learned that hustle mentality put me in a space that compromised not only my agreements with you all, but it was ultimately compromising the health of my family. And so, um, I mean, we're speaking hindsight's 2020, right? But in that moment, I'm like,
Yeah.
there's no way I'm going back. Like, I got to get this. I got to make it happen. And I learned that it was also adding to the tension in the household when I was just like, I don't understand this. I'm trying to figure it out, and y'all are getting mad. Like, nah, like I'll just fix it. But it was that thought process that became, in my opinion, a catalyst to the challenging conversation that we needed to have, but we weren't
Mhm.
having because we had so many other things going on because it's work for me, it's work for you. You're working several hours, I'm working several hours, and then we have the responsibilities of our families and ministry. So it was like we were both kind of doing similar things in just different areas in our own ways and versions. And I don't think we were able to really notice it enough to hit the pause button and say, hold up, this thing is spinning out of control and we know we don't want that. I think we just tried to keep it all together, and
Mhm.
that is everything that started to topple over.
Yeah. The one thing that I know, professionally, is that when you're not exercising good self care, you're not getting enough rest, um, the stress and tension, conversations are not going to go well.
Right. Very
And
true.
so, and I also knew for me that I'm not really a night person, and I was pulling such long hours. And on my way home, I would say, I need to have conversations. I need to have conversations. And I would say, nope, I can't do this tonight because it is definite. I knew that the conversation was going to be one of confrontation. And so
Mhm.
I needed to be able to, choose the words and say it, especially when you're having communication with someone that's living with you but you haven't raised. And so there's all of this navigating as to how is this conversation supposed to go. Like if you had come out of my womb, it'd be like, look, this is
Right.
it. And so I knew that it couldn't go that way, and because that would not have been productive. And so it just continued, and we had other stressors in the home, um, other external stressors that just continued to add to a situation that was unraveling.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, early on, you were doing phenomenal. You had saved several $1,000s.
Mhm.
And then after the contract ended, then you had to start living off of that, off of that money. And so I think I had to process that. I know that I was doing. I felt, obviously doing a good deed, and I'm thinking, how in the world did we get here?
Yeah.
And also, as Christians, how did we allow ourselves to get to this point? And I remember even saying that, a couple of times, we know better than this, we know better. Um, but it wasn't getting better. Would you
Yeah.
agree?
I would agree. I think we indeed knew better, but I think what we knew, uh, we didn't practice. We didn't practice. I think we were going off of what was probably archived and probably we should have put away with versus what we understood and could have practiced. So I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, yeah. And so, as time went on, um, I remember having a conversation with you. I admittedly began to withdraw. I felt as though the conversations that I had already had, the suggestions that I had already given, the wisdom that I thought that I had, I felt that I had given what I could give, and if I kept saying anything, it would be like a broken record that I had already said. So in my mind, I was just trying to figure out how do we make a smooth transition to end, the time in the home. How what could be done to end the time in the home and it not be a catastrophe. And
Mm.
so I started to pull back a little bit and, and kind of just be in my own space. And I remember having a conversation with you, and you said that you felt dropped because, again, we were supposed to be mother son.
Mhm.
And so you made the comment that you felt dropped. Tell me, talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think this is the conversation we might have been on the phone. I think I might have called you. Is that what you're referencing?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I do remember that, and if I remember that particular moment, um, I think with everything that was happening, the reason I felt dropped is because of the fact that I knew that in the months prior, whenever moments got difficult, we still had a conversation somehow, some way. We would come together, we would sit in the side room. Hey, what here are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? Here are my thoughts. Let's come to some level of understanding. And I felt like those moments began to end because it just seemed like it was just getting tougher to try to really uh, manage all that was going on. And so, as you said, things became unfortunately more intense in the home, and it was best to just try to figure it out. But I think that the tension that you felt and I felt, uh, because we both felt it, I think I internalized that and processed that in such a way where it was just like, so you're not even talking to me anymore. Like, we are, you know, my personality, or we've, because we live together, you know how I am. So I'm sensing things, I'm reading things, and I'm like, this just changed. And I think, I don't remember the timelines, but I think I even might have made a comment like, something just happened between us, though it wasn't super blatant or intense at that moment. I was like, something just changed. And that thing started to really build up to the point that I could really feel like there was no longer any protection, no longer any opportunity for understanding, you know? And so for me, it put me in a very mental, vulnerable space, because I was like, I know that there was a level of security. I know that there was a level of that minimum conversation where we would at least, even if we didn't agree, we would talk about it. Uh, but that had ended. And that was just something I was just like, whoa, okay, wait. Like, out of everything, I never expected to feel that. And so that dropping made it seem as if that everything else that was challenging or difficult seemed like it compounded, because now it felt like the if you will, the hedge of protection, that shield, that grace, that net was gone. That's what it felt like. So when I said I felt drop, I think it was at that moment I actually felt the impact of all that was taking place. And so then that, I think, put me in a space of like, now I'm withdrawing, because now I don't have that comfort. I don't have that ability to uh that safe place. I feel like the safe place was withdrawn. And so, yeah, in that conversation, when I spoke with you, it was me trying to converse that, or convey that to you. And I know that in that conversation you heard it, but I think it was by that time I had felt it, and it was just, I want to be as respectful, but at the same time now I feel the pain that I didn't expect to feel at all.
Yeah. And I remember, I don't remember if I actually said this to you, but I remember, trying to process over and over again how to have these conversations, because I was by then I was pretty frustrated. I could even say I was angry by that point,
Mm-hmm.
that that the job situation, had not worked out, and there was no finances, coming in. And so I knew that, because of the conversations we had had in the past about you being, hurt by other, people that you were in relationship with, I had this uh, protective love kind of thing for you. I didn't want you to have to go through, hearing one negative statement after the other, because what I had to talk about would have been all negative. Like, I want you to go get a job, and I had said that several
Mm-hmm.
times, and you said that $12 you felt you were worth more than that. I'm like, $12 is better than no dollars, and
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't want to continue beating that, because I know that self esteem issues were things that you had dealt with. So I felt like my role was to pour, was to build you up, was to, help you feel good about yourself. But in the end, the withdrawal was, as you stated, doing the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a weird space. And then having others in my ear,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not sharing some of these things that you had already shared with me, in confidence about past relationships. And so, just trying to navigate what people, thought that I should do, and decisions that we should have made. And so it just made it quite a difficult time for
Yeah.
us. And so we made the decision that it would be, best for we gave a date, for you to transition, and my hope was that by the time that it was time for you to transition and leave the home, that we could work it and get to a place where we felt like, okay, we're at peace. Things did not work out the way in which we thought that they were supposed to work out. The goals that were set were not established, were not fulfilled by the time, that date was to come. But can we come to some place of peace? So let's talk about what that was like, coming to the end of your time living with us.
Okay, so around that time, I think that journey was what, maybe about 2 months or so. And so,
Mm-hmm.
to give context to it, um, you're right, money wasn't coming in, but I think also, well, not also, not but money wasn't coming in, but I was going out interviewing. So I think this adding tension to it was, I am interviewing, I am in the process of getting a job. Um, trying to become a security guard. I'm trying to, I'm eating it to now do that, to go work at like Whole Foods and things of that nature. So when we make this decision during that time, I am pulling on whatever resources I can to get a job, to start to do something. So, but that's also not working, or the process of that is taking forever. I know the security guard job was a quite extensive wait for at least where I was trying to go. And then the other jobs, they were just kind of like their setup was rather interesting. It wasn't guaranteeing funds or whatever. So then when we had that agreement, we were also introduced to this thing called rapid rehousing or
Mm-hmm.
homelessness prevention or something like that. And it was a program that would help individuals like us in the circumstance to find housing, get assistance, and ultimately set a program to help us get on our feet too. So we're trying to take advantage of that as well in the midst of all that. And so when we're going through the journey and it's seeming like none of these things are happening, um, like the security guard classes, I passed them, but now I'm waiting to get placed, and so they're still doing stuff in my background. Um, I'm still trying to get the contracted thing back on schedule, but though I'm getting bare minimum income or opportunities. So saying that, all this tension is now adding, and now I'm like, now I have a date to be out of here. Like, so now this is making it even more challenging, and so that made it where it was just, I would say, hard to speak. I think one of the things I learned in the home was, when I become stressed, or when I became stressed, or when I became offended, or when I became hurt, I started to silence myself and just, I'm gonna keep my mouth closed so I don't say anything out of pocket. And what I learned that a lot about me, because it was just something I did. No one ever pointed it out. So I think at that time it was like, well, since I gotta leave and nothing's working, and seemingly like no one seems or sees or understands what's going on, I'm just gonna keep my mouth closed until I get out of here. So I think that time just made it even more challenging to converse. Um, and so in that, it's just, we would do things. I'm only gonna share a little bit, but we would do things in the house like, you could just start to feel like the lines were divided. Like, if people have milk in the refrigerator, our children's name was on it, or like, we wouldn't share the room like we used to. We wouldn't eat at the tables like we used to, and things of that nature. It just really became transactional. And so I think that for me, how I digested all of that, it was something where um, I'm like, I'm just here until I no longer need to be, because I got to figure it out now. Like, there is no more assistance. And so I think, as I had that forefront thought in the back of my mind, it's tearing me apart, because I'm just like, this is not what was supposed to be happening. So I'm now battling, like, Nate, what did you do? How did you do that? So it's like, you have condemnation being built on it, self condemnation. I'm not necessarily dealing with my self esteem, but I'm checking myself, like, are you a man? Like, you can't get up on your own 2 feet? Like, what's happening? And at the same time, I'm like, how did you allow this aspect of you to become such a big problem? How is this thing that was supposed to be getting tailored and developed and trained and groomed now become a part of your downfall? And so those are the thoughts that were plaguing my mind daily. And so the best thing to shut it off was to ultimately accelerate the journey of getting out of there. Like, I don't want to feel this anymore. And I'm not talking to these individuals. No one seems to understand or care, because that's the thoughts that I had in my mind. So, you know what? Let me step out of this. So I think that's what the journey and the mindset was. If I remember correctly, I don't even think I preached at the church maybe the last few months going into it. And when I look back at it, I'm like, wow, not because preaching is the total thing, but I think like it started to show like my contribution and my commitment, which is more so like I need to leave if I'm going to try to be any kind of a believer that stands on something solid. Like I need to get out of there. And I wasn't interpreting those things properly. And I know, again, family wise, we weren't really talking well. So yeah, that just became a thing where I totally withdrew. Like, I'm done. I don't really have much to say. I'm going to be here to be polite, but I'm on my way out.
Yeah. That the I think the part that was most significant in terms of being hurtful, I should say, was when you shifted from calling me mom to calling me Pastor Danita in
Yeah.
the home. And that that was like, wow. And then I realized when you said, oh, you hadn't preached, and there was, minimal, it was just spilling over into ministry. And then I thought, you know what? I had never invited anyone to live in our home in this role as a pastor. So now I'm wearing two hats in your life, as your
Mm-hmm.
pastor and your spiritual mom. And it just went over into ministry, which, if I wasn't a pastor, I don't think it would have ever mattered. If I was just
Mm-hmm.
some member of a church. And so when it went over into ministry, and um, I believe people were making their own narratives about what was, going on, because, it wasn't like we were getting up with a microphone and sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that was a part that became challenging as well. But when we got to the end and you were getting ready to leave, we had a conversation, and I felt like the conversation was peaceful enough that when you returned, that we would be able to pick up pieces and continue to move forward and grow. But that didn't necessarily happen. And so after you left, you continued to feel, hurt, and you
Mm-hmm.
started taking this reconciliation journey. I don't want to run out of time, because that's a very important part of this segment, to talk about how you began to heal, do your own inner healing. Again, I was at the place where I was hurt, um, but I knew where to put the hurt. And so I I viewed what was happening as a behavior, but I told you this, that I wasn't attaching to you. My love for you wasn't changing. I was very frustrated over the behavior and very hurt over the behavior, but that didn't have anything to do with my love for you. And we had that conversation a
Mm-hmm.
couple of times, if you remember. But
Mm-hmm.
then after you left, however you were feeling, it didn't heal right away. And so you went on this healing journey. And so share some of that, because that's the very important part of this segment, to help people understand that healing is possible, even when you get to, places where you feel like you just want to throw in the towel. You could have kept it moving. I could have kept it moving, and that would have been that.
So yeah, I'll definitely keep it concise but honest and thorough. Like, when we finally parted ways, that was traumatic for me, and not because it was done in a traumatic fashion. I mean, I think it was rather amicable. We had tears in our eyes. This wasn't what we wanted. We did it well, but I think that what made it traumatic was um, we did not resolve, at least in that moment, um, a lot of the things that, like, all the back and forth and all that stuff and all the unspoken things. um we just didn't resolve it well in that moment. So when we concluded that time, sometime in like June or whatever it was, I think, um yeah, that thing hit me like a brick. But at the same time, because I'm a believer, about a month prior to leaving, I was given this term of reconciliation that I didn't really know well to study. And so for that entire time, I would say about a year, I was just heavily deep in studying it. So as I'm studying this and seeing how it's not active in my life at this moment, I'm being torn apart. And so it's just making it very challenging. So I'm like, okay, if I'm supposed to go back and talk, and how come we didn't do this? And Nate, why did I do, like, I have all these different thoughts. So that brings me through a journey of having to really sit with myself and learn not just the faults of others, but Nate, look at you. Like, what were your contributions? What did you not do? And that portion of the journey is the most disgusting part of the journey, because you're looking at yourself. And for me, as I also learned, where I didn't think that I was a prideful, where I just thought that I was a person that's trying to stay my own. Like, I think it broke me down because the Lord had to really show me where my pride was. That, yeah, in some areas, sure, that's great that you're a go getter and you can make it happen and stand your ground. But there are also moments where you need to, swallow your pride. You need to humble yourself and yield that ear. And ultimately, as scripture says, not be a fool, because a person that despises instructions is a fool. That's literally what it says. And so I had to understand my foolish ways. And so that was very challenging. But what made it even more difficult for me, because I also learned I'm an emotional person, was the fact that I'm like, well, what about everybody else? And so I'm in my mind, I'm rehearsing all of the experiences and I'm pinpointing all the things. And so the Lord really had to help me to understand that though there were other participants, though there were other aspects, there are also other perspectives, there are also other views that were not just mine. And so I had to spend time eating all of that for myself and learning not just how to reconcile, but really learning how to forgive, really learning how to adjust a perspective, and really mean what I said. So for me, that journey was very hard because I had to remember the conversations I had with you, Pop Arnell, Kevin, Karan, Kiera, and say, do I still mean what I say when I say I love these individuals? Do I still mean what I said when I was committing myself to them and things of that nature? And that journey was really tough, but in the midst, I was able to find that. And as I began to find that, it led me to a point of wanting to then start having conversations again. Um, but that process wasn't short. I think it took me a little under a year to get there, because even
Mhm.
in the time I was leaving, we came back. I'm still trying to figure out, like, I'm now looking at the people that in my mind at that moment, these are the people that hurt me. This isn't Mom Danita or Pastor or Pop Arnell or whatever. These are the people who hurt my heart. So I had to relearn how to see you in that way. And that was very difficult. So that journey of reconciliation really took me to look at me, um, genuinely forgive what I've perceived as faults and things of that nature, but really look at me and allow myself to say, you know what, Nate, you got some work that you need to do. And then in that, when I resolved that, as I'll close this now, as I began to resolve those areas, I made it a point to say, I still mean what I said about I love you. So I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna try to initiate. And even if my heart feels a little uncertain, I'm gonna still do it because I meant what I said when I said it. And so that is what I think started us conversing again, not because you weren't willing. I mean, you have a crazy schedule. We all have crazy schedules. But for me, it was, let me get to the point of genuinely initiating and showing that I'm really going to try and putting my best foot forward in that regard. And it was helpful. It began the process of what how we got here, how we're doing this now. So, yeah, that was a synopsis of my journey.
Yeah, and we had several conversations, and I'm grateful that we took that time and we made the space for those conversations. And it did take a few meetings before we got to the place where we could exhale and say that this is good, that we talked through sufficiently to get to the other side and to be able to say, yeah, our hearts are clear. For me, and I'll be brief, the part that I had to work through, you know how, when you do good for somebody and then it doesn't work out the way that you think it was supposed to work out. I usually say to people that I'm counseling, I'm like, well, did you start out doing that with, with the expectation that, um, you know, did you think through that it could possibly not go the way in which you were intended for it to go? So where was your heart? And so I had to process. I did this with good intentions, and that doesn't mean that because it didn't go the way in which I thought it should go, that I'm just going to be, mad for the rest of my days. And so I had to just, process through that. Did you do it because you expected it to be, exactly the way you intended for it to go, and because it didn't, so now, you have different thoughts. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's the part that, I really had to process through. I don't do good things with the expectation that if it doesn't go well, then I shouldn't have done it. And
Yeah.
so I got to that place where I didn't feel that I shouldn't have done it. I felt like, wow, I learned a lot about me. You learned a lot about you. And now we're back at this place where we can continue a journey in whichever way that's going to go, with peace in our hearts, and
Yeah.
with a reconnection where we can say that it's true, and
Yeah.
it's honorable. And so that is when that's the main part that I really wanted this particular episode to be able to display, where we could say that, because unfortunately church people don't always do this well.
Right.
And so, where we could actually say that we got to a healthy place, we worked it. It was a journey. And this was 2019, right? When
Yeah.
you actually left. And so now we're in 2021, and we're able to say that our hearts are reconnected
Yeah.
and the work was done. And I appreciate your vulnerability. I appreciate you willing to be on this live, and I think that it's going to be a blessing for many people, because our story is not unique.
Right.
There are many, many people in church settings that are having difficulty with navigating relationships, or have had fallen outs, and whatever you want to call them, and then just having a struggle. So we don't really have time left, but what kind of tip can you offer someone who may be struggling through a relationship similar to ours?
I think two tips that I will offer. Number one, um, analyze yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely analyze yourself. Consider your actions, and not just from your point of view. Analyze yourself, and if you can identify any fault, then you want to resolve your fault within yourself because you contributed that. Um, don't point the finger, or try not to do that, or make it seem as if that it was all the other person, because there was you and the other person involved, so you did contribute. The other tip will be initiate that conversation. One thing I've learned about reconciliation is not being hesitant to say, "Hey, let's try this again." and being genuine. If it's going to work, it's going to work, and if it doesn't, that doesn't mean that you failed. That just means that there's more healing that needs to take place. But don't be afraid to initiate. And so, I think those would be two very beneficial tips: resolving and looking at yourself, and then being fearless to initiate.
Yeah, and the vulnerability is huge as well. It takes being willing to be vulnerable because you never know what the other person's response is going to be when you initiate and when you say, "Hey, let's have this conversation." So that takes a level of vulnerability as well. And so, well, thank you so much. I will offer more tips on Monday for our Monday's mental moment segment. And so you can definitely join on Monday at 7:30 for that particular segment. Anyone who is watching that may want more tips for navigating this type of relationship. Thank you so much for joining me on tonight. This was good. I
Yes.
enjoyed our time together, this conversation of transparency. It took, I think, it took courage to, be transparent to this extent. And so, thank you so much for joining me,
And thank you
and look forward
for
to,
having me.
yeah, love you much.
I love you. I'll talk to you soon now.
Alrighty.
All right.